Welcome to Transforming Us podcast. I'm Jess.
And I'm Tamara. We're trauma-informed relationship coaches and old friends here to discuss common patterns and what leads us to paths of security.
You know, people are feeling overwhelmed and disconnected in their painful relationships, which often leads to mental health crises.
We want to share some new ideas and practices to help you cultivate curiosity, compassion, and to redeem the patterns in your relationships, starting with yourself.
Join us on this journey of transforming us. Grab a cup of coffee and let's dive in. Hey friends, today we are launching a new project called Transforming Us. We hope to lay it all out there for you guys and not leave any relationship stone unturned. We want to share our stories about why we became coaches and explain what are relationship patterns anyway. So we're just going to jump in. So how are you doing?
I'm doing really, really good. I really want to hear about your cruise that you just got back from. Did you have a good time?
Yeah, my husband, Travis, and I went on a cruise to celebrate our 17th anniversary, late, 17 and a half years. But we went to the Caribbean and it was fantastic.
That's so good.
Yeah, just to have that time to sit and watch the waves and walk the islands and talk uninterrupted. We never really did much for our honeymoon. We got married on the beach and just used that as our honeymoon. We were just in South Carolina at the time and have never taken a really big trip like that. So
this makes up for lost time.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Long awaited.
That's so good.
Yeah, it was beautiful.
I love it. I'm so glad.
Yeah. So let me ask you, instead of how are you, I like to ask sometimes, how do you come? Because it invites a little bit more honesty. Like when we say, how are you? Most of the time people are like, oh, I'm good.
Yeah.
So how do you come, Tamara?
I come in a place of peace today. I feel like I'm just been in a season where I've been seeing like answer to prayer. I've been feeling very encouraged in my spirit lately. I think part of that is also just taking time to like reflect and kind of step back. My husband and I had been in a season with, our daughters, building houses and renovating houses and starting businesses. And, it just was this wonderful, but hard and busy and full. And so I feel like I've just been trying to give myself permission to just like kind of be, I'm still doing things, but also like giving myself more grace to just like rest and have time to reflect and reprieve, and realizing like how that's just so important that us as Americans feel like, we always have to be so busy. But there's beauty in kind of scaling back for seasons and rebuilding replenishing your energy again. And before you go back out.
Yeah. We had a similar season a couple of years ago. And it just, when you go through that for 2 or 3 years and you're like, I need to create a life that's a little bit more sustainable and have space. Is so good. And to feel freedom and permission to do that. So good for you.
Absolutely.
Well, you mentioned your family. Why don't you tell me a little bit about your family?
Yeah. So I met my husband, Taylor, when I was 17, and we got married. We were very young sweethearts. We got married at 20 and 21. So we've been married for going on 24 years, which is insane. Time is so bizarre how fast it goes. We have 2 teen daughters, 14 and 16 years old. So we are definitely in the season of parenting teen girls and just the transitions of life that comes in that. It's just, it's interesting, when you've been an adult for a couple decades now, and it's just like that transitional period, but it's good, but it's, it's just, I think change is, coming, and you just like prepare for that. And it's exciting, but a little bittersweet at the same time, What about your family?
my family, so my husband and I have been married for 17 years, like I mentioned. We all, me and you, both live in South Carolina, Spartanburg area, and I have 5 kids. So they range from, our youngest is 5 years old, and then we have a 14-year-old, a 16-year-old, a 17-year-old, and a 19-year-old. So the oldest two are adopted. We adopted through the foster care system in 2016, and that's been a journey, and that's part of my story. Um, but yeah, we just kind of, if I were to describe our family, like, we love celebrating. We
Mm-hmm.
will find anything to celebrate. It could be news, it could be good news, it could be relieving news, it could be, um, somebody got um, an overage check in the mail, and we're like, oh, yay, let's celebrate.
I
So
love it.
we
That's so
just
fun.
love taking the little bits that we get out of life,
Yeah.
and turning it into a party. So we'll make parties all the time. And we do like to travel. We value travel over like driving nice cars or things
Yeah.
like that. So the extra money that we have, we like to put into experiences.
I love that. We're the same
That's
way.
us.
We are all just like addicted to travel. Love it.
Yeah.
That's
So
awesome.
you and I reconnected
Mm-hmm.
last year, um, after you were on my husband and I's podcast, Cultivate the
Mm-hmm.
Ordinary.
Yep.
So let's tell a little bit about our friendship,
Yeah.
and where we have come from, and where we
Right.
are today.
Sounds good. Well, I met you, I would say maybe 6-ish years ago. And it was when I was homeschooling my daughters for a couple years. And I met you, and we were hanging out at an apple orchard. You remember that?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And we started talking. We both discovered we were artists and we just had a lot in common. And then when I stopped homeschooling, we just kind of naturally, our paths didn't cross anymore. So we went several years where we just lost touch. And
Mm-hmm.
then this past year, you reached out to me. You and Travis wanted to interview me for my art business on your podcast. And so I did that. And, we went on that walk and just reconnected. And we both realized after conversating that we were both studying about attachment theory and getting certified as coaches. And that was like a big aha for us because, you just don't hear about that every day when you get in
Yeah.
contact with people.
Yeah.
So it's been really cool.
Yeah. No, I remember feeling the same way. It was just like, okay, here's this friend that I always connected with. We have a lot in
Hmm.
common, but life pulled us apart. And we thought you would be a great person to interview for Cultivate the Ordinary, which is just all about like how people extract beauty and awe and wonder and God's presence from everyday life, and you and your art and the way that you show up and do that type of work that God's given you to do is just a beautiful thing. And I wanted to hear about it. So, and it gave us the opportunity to reconnect and learn that we're on a very similar path.
Yeah.
And so that just began, a 6-month kind of process of coffees and
Yeah.
talks and, brainstorming, and just realizing we both have a passion for helping people, and we both love to learn, love to gather resources and synthesize information, and, make it available to people we care about because we feel like it's just really important.
Yeah.
So this is what kind of brought us to here, where
Hmm.
we're starting this Transforming Us project, whatever
Yeah.
that's going to look like. It's a
Yeah.
little open handed. We don't know.
Hmm.
But we thought a podcast and conversations is a great place to start. So,
Yeah, absolutely. I'm
yeah.
excited to be here. Yeah.
Yeah, me too. So, how about you share a little bit about your background? I know you shared about the art some, but
Hmm.
anything else you want to share on your experiences that have equipped you for this type of work?
Yeah. I think that what's interesting because you hear kind of people talk about like if you look back at your childhood, what were the things that you were drawn to as a child? And people can kind of sometimes it can help clue us in for the things we end up being passionate about later on. And so I think like looking back as a child, I feel like I always was very drawn towards like relational things. And I saw my mom, as a single mom, I grew up without a father in the home. And so I just saw how her relationships with her friends were so, like, so life-giving and so like create so much security and like trust and support for her, as a single mom. And so that was always modeled to me. So I
Mm-hmm.
feel like I grew up, relational things, friendships and relationships in general, like were always like something that I would prioritize and would consider, like worth my time to invest in. And and then, going through college, I ended up being a communications major, but would still, take a lot of psychology courses. I did my senior thesis in college was on marriage and communication. And, when my husband and I got married young, we ended up leading some small groups for our church. We ended up doing couple groups for our church, leading in that. Um, and then the church had asked us after we'd been married for 10 years if we would start helping do pre-marriage counseling. So I think like looking back at like, you see those patterns in your life and it was always
Mm-hmm.
like there, you know? And so then
Yeah.
here I am in my 40s now, and it's like all of a sudden, like really, like it feels like the time to really step into this more, especially as I've been a fine artist working in a solitary studio, which, is one part of myself that's getting utilized. But then there's this whole other part of me, the relational piece, that I just feel like there's a
Mm-hmm.
lot to give to the world. So
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for sharing
yeah.
that.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, I love the beauty of the journey and the twists and turns and how that, how you put all those pieces together to look at life now and go, okay, God has really shaped me for here, for now. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. What about you?
I, um, I similarly always was very aware of others' pain, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Even in middle school, high school, I was drawn to people who had challenges in their family life and wanted to be a listening ear, wanting to be a support, wanted to give them help in whatever way I could at such a young age. And after several years getting married, my husband and I moved to South Carolina to become house parents at a children's home. And it was through that process of learning about trauma and eventually adopting that I became extremely passionate about just development and knowing what leads to the psychological pain and wounds and things that people experience. So whether it's kids who come from trauma or it's adults who came from quote unquote normal homes, but they have attachment issues, they have trouble in their relationships and they don't know why.
Mm-hmm.
So I dove into just learning because I wanted to understand, and discovered I had some attachment insecurities,
Mm-hmm.
and it really helped me. Um, but yeah, I would say my background in just the parenting from trauma, and then later getting certified as an Enneagram and marriage coach, learning about personality, and we'll
Mm-hmm.
talk more about that. But that was extremely shaping. And going back to my 20s before adopting, I also, my husband and I led groups through our church. We did small groups for years and then did something called redemption groups, which got deeper into the issues that people have and the anger they have with God, or just
Mm-hmm.
different things like that, where you have that opportunity to do some healing work in a safe environment. And I just fell in love with group work. Um, got trained as a lay counseling person, but then we moved, so I never got to practice. So, yeah, just I think that kind of helps give a nutshell of what
Yeah.
started, what my background in this type of stuff is.
Yeah. That is neat how so many things are just like stepping stones. So when you were sharing about, how you grew up and how you had, a care for other people and all that. What were some of the wounds that you discovered that you had? Like, just to lightly touch on some of that, since we're going to be talking about some of that
Yeah.
stuff through this podcast.
Yeah, I think looking back when I started learning about some of the psychology stuff and trauma stuff, I realized, although I grew up in a very supportive, amazing home in some ways, um, my parents both had their own traumas, and they had some really difficult things that they were healing from when I was really young. So they were in therapy, and they were working on their own marriage and uncovering their own stuff. So it was a bit chaotic before I was 12.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I pinpoint some of the things that I dealt with later in life and in marriage and in relationships as an insecure attachment. So more anxious leaning,
Mm-hmm.
which we'll talk more about. But that just means that I would get pretty dysregulated when I felt like somebody's connection was was withheld from me.
Mm-hmm.
When I was insecure and not sure what I should be doing, I was looking for to other people's facial expressions,
Mm-hmm.
or trying to get validation, trying to figure out how am I supposed to make you happy. That was how I was showing up in a lot of ways, people pleasing, not really honoring my own needs, but just looking for the needs of others,
Mm-hmm.
and trying really hard to just be loved.
Yeah.
Not knowing all the while I was fully and completely loved, and that I didn't need to work so hard at it.
Right.
But emotionally, I had this anxious state that kept me wondering, do
Mm-hmm.
you really care about me? And so
Yeah.
identifying that, along with just other things, doing story work, really being able to go back and go, okay, how did my story, before age 25 shape me, and what do I actually need to heal from?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
What about you? What do you think you identified in your
Yeah.
stuff?
Well, I think now, as we've been studying about attachment, which, we'll talk a lot more about in these podcast episodes in the future for people to learn about. But I think I have self discovered that I feel like I probably was more of like a fearful avoidant. I feel like I would go between anxious and a little avoidant depending on the situation. I think, and again, this is all on a subconscious level. Like, I'm
Oh,
not
yeah.
doing this on purpose, but I think I would always be kind of scanning, um, like if I felt like I could be rejected, or if I felt like an uneasiness, I would go in self protective mode and not put myself out as much. And then, but I could feel myself swing anxious too, depending on the scenario. And, you know, I can look back now and it makes so much sense. I grew up without a male in my house, and, I missed a parent figure where I didn't feel safe or secure with men. And I had a lot of female friends, and my mother and my grandmother and all their friends that were like aunts to me. So I felt very like safe and secure in my femininity and around females. And it took me, I'd say, to the latter part of high school when I started growing more in my faith, started realizing God was, my father, like my heavenly father. And that started shifting some things in me. And then I met my husband, when I was around 17, 18, and he was a very like secure base for me at the time. And I just remember, which I won't go into too much depth because of time, but I just remember instinctively, like one time I would have had the instinct to pull away, like something was wrong. I didn't know how to vet for my needs. I didn't know how to, kind of like what you said, I didn't know how to express and communicate how I was feeling. And so I remember, like, if I would pull away or say, "Oh, I'm fine," Ted would be like, "It's okay. You can tell me how you're feeling. Like, I'm not going to leave. Like, I want you to, like, you can always tell me things." And so slowly over time, I started feeling safer and safer and safer to start expressing myself and saying how I actually felt. So it is really amazing. I feel like, when with insecure attachments, um, that we can, all of us aren't 100, no one's 100% secure, but
Hmm.
it's just interesting how when you have, more secure, closer people in your life, it actually does start to help you heal in some of those things in time, as well as for me, like just growing my relationship with the Lord. That became a very secure base for me, where I knew I was
Mm,
fully seen, fully loved,
yeah.
and it allowed me to like show up more authentically, as I started going forward.
Mm, I love that so much. Yeah, and I think just that reminder that we can transform, like we can change, that just because your story has a lot of pain or your story has some gaps, it, you can become more secure, and that's what transforming us is really about. I read recently that kind of the definition of transformation really is just to going beyond your form, and I think just getting really honest with yourself, beginning to say, what did happen? Where am I now? And where do I want to go? That's kind of the goal. So we talk a lot,
Yeah.
and we will talk a lot about patterns in general on this podcast. And we want to first identify and make sure people know what we're talking about when we say patterns. So, what are patterns anyway?
Patterns are basically, which, it takes time. You have to be able to self reflect, but patterns are seeing how you show up in relationships, friendships with people. Obviously, it can shift and change the more intimate the relationship is. That's where I feel like you see the most, of our insecurities coming out, because people can get really close and it can press against those wounds if they're unhealed. And it's learning to be able to recognize and step back to see patterns and then be able to actually be ready to want to heal. And that's what I love about, you know, people, is that nothing is fixed. We all
Mm-hmm.
have room to grow and change and shift and reshape those parts of us. And that just comes with awareness. Awareness is a huge piece. And then the willingness to want to, go into, counseling or therapy if needed, facing some stuff, go, start like learning, reading books, listening to podcasts about, becoming more secure and showing up, for yourself and showing up for, those that you love, and being willing to work on yourself so that there's freedom and there's growth and breakthrough on the other side, and
Mm-hmm.
it's completely life changing when
Yeah.
people are ready to do the work.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And that like willingness to what a lot of people would call psycho educate yourself,
Mm-hmm.
being able to, what we're doing here is, you and I are not therapists or
Mm-hmm.
psychologists. We're coaches. We care about people. We have some skills to to help people walk through what tools and things that they can access, and assessments and things. But at the end of the day, everyone's got to do the work themselves and educate themselves. And there's so much hope, so much hope. And much of these things, like when we talk about patterns, they're unconscious, like you had said before. Some of them are conscious as you start to look and pay attention and observe yourself. But a lot of things happen so instinctively from such a young age. It's all unconscious. And so I would like to just read this little blurb that you and I wrote about the patterns that we're going to be discussing over many podcasts. So these patterns are largely influenced by someone's attachment style, which is shaped by early childhood experiences and their Enneagram personality style, which is partly nature and partly nurture. Both systems identify core motivations and self protection in thinking, feeling, and behaving, which forms their life and in their relationships. So, like you had said, it's just kind of how you show up in the world, right? So, patterns for you and I, we really have distilled it down to knowing about attachment style and knowing about Enneagram personality patterns
Yeah.
gives so much good information to say, okay, where am I now? And
Hmm.
what is the path? So instead of from A to B to get what I've always gotten, this common pattern that is predictable that I always do, if I want to transform and change into a healthier version of myself, who God made me to be, and not the self-protective person that's trying to like create these strategies for, people to love me or to have control or to feel safe or any of those things. How do I get to maybe C instead and take a different route and try something new? And so that's just such a fun journey to do with
Yeah.
people.
Yeah. And I love that we're not alone in it. We can have, groups and, there's things to be a part of. And
Mm-hmm.
it's actually exciting when you start realizing the growth that happens, and it makes you want to continue to keep growing as you start, seeing the changes in your
Mm-hmm.
life and how it affects how you show up so much stronger and healthier and better overall.
Yeah, for sure.
So, Jess, how have these systems actually helped your marriage and your other relationships in your own life?
Yeah, great question. I my husband and I went through a season of helping to care for his dad who had dementia, as well as care for his brother who's disabled, and he still does care for his brother, um, but his father passed away in 2022, and we had a couple of years of so much giving to others, and just we had a baby in that time, and our son Dakota is 5 now. But the combination of having a child that didn't sleep and giving as caregivers, and just I was homeschooling at the time, and we had bought property and we were developing that. And there was just so many things like you described. It was a very full season that had no space for self-reflection and, date nights and, things like that. It
Mm-hmm.
was just kind of grind.
Yeah.
Um, it left us desperate for some help to understand one another because we were having a lot of conflict. And we discovered um, Sue Johnson. She does a lot of work around attachment theory and relationships, because some people focus on attachment theory as far as like child development, but it's just really helpful for adult relationships. And um, went through one of her books and worked with a therapist, and then later did Enneagram and marriage coaching, and both of which were incredibly helpful, hard at times, but to be able to have a common language for some of these things that were showing up on a regular basis. My husband is an Enneagram 8. He's a very, confident, strong, assertive personality. I'm an Enneagram 4, and I tend to be um, more just softer and like slower in thinking, and more sensitive to emotion and facial expressions and all that stuff. And so, his unawareness of emotion and my high over over awareness of emotion was just really butting heads a lot. And even though all the situations were different and we would face many different contexts, what we were always seeing is just this push pull of, his personality and my personality, his needs and my needs. And so both of those systems were, gave us the language to talk about what was going on, like as if it was this map in front of us and not between us anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So tell me about your relationships, whether it's your marriage or other relationships. How has learning this stuff helped you?
Um, well, um, again, when I self reflect, I feel like in my 20s, I started recognizing, which I think we do as we get a little older, you start seeing more and more, things that you want to like grow through. And so I started recognizing just absent father wounds that I had. I did go to counseling, I remember for a couple months, and that really helped me kind of like connect some dots, from my childhood and kind of help heal some of those inner child wounds there. And then I learned how to just have better boundaries. I learned how to, my husband and I both came from um, loving homes, but not as, um, like emotions and like really having hard conversations wasn't something that I feel like was really modeled a ton. We wanted to rewrite the script for the family we were going to start. And so we just, I can look back on our newlywed Tamara and Taylor, we could get more defensive and like, not hear each other when we're trying to talk about stuff and, or having like, just, arguments or whatever, trying to work through stuff. And I feel like when we started really understanding like, hey, I'm for you. So I'm not telling you something to hurt your feelings. Like if I'm saying it, like I'm for you. And so I feel like that totally changed how we would receive things from each other. Like this is
Mm-hmm.
constructive. This isn't meant to hurt. This is constructive. This is meant to help. And so I think that really shifted the way we work through conflict. And
Mm-hmm.
I became, very passionate about communication because my husband and I both are high communicators. I think just by nature, you know, uh, like not looking at conflict as like that's not a bad thing. Conflict isn't meant to be this big scary thing. But I think when you grow up in houses where you're not seeing that modeled well, it can feel scary
Yeah.
or unsure. So yeah, I feel like all of that has really transformed my relationships with people, and even like with friendships, or like if in the workplace and say something, like if something's really rubbing you the wrong way and doesn't feel right, being able to speak the truth in love, like being able to like have hard conversations, but doing it in a respectful way where you're not criticizing someone.
Mm-hmm.
That changes the game, because it disarms people when you approach, if you're actually speaking out of, love to someone. So,
Mm.
um,
Yeah.
yeah, that would be just like
Yeah.
scratching the surface, but yeah.
Yeah. It's beautiful. It's really cool. I'm curious too, like what role has your faith played in all of this learning and
Yeah.
what you want to do as a coach?
Yeah. Well, my faith has, I mean, definitely been like the benchmark of my healing, of who I am now. I feel like once I started to truly understand that, like, God loves me in this way where I don't have to show up and come and perform, I don't have to
Mm-hmm.
try to have it all together. Like, He sees me and knows me and loves me fully. And there's so much freedom that comes from that, and just the grace you're able to give yourself and other people. So I feel like when I say earlier, speaking the truth in love, coming out of a place of love with the people and the relationships in our life, like I think because I have felt the love of Christ,
Mm-hmm.
I am able to now transfer that love to people, even if they do something that hurts me, or even like, as you realize in the end of the day, people like hurt people.
Mm.
So if someone's hurting you, it's like changed my perspective. Instead of feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm so offended. It's like, I'm like, there's something probably deeper that's happened or
Mm-hmm.
that's going on internally within someone. Or if you look at
Mm-hmm.
the past, if you look at their past, you know, how did they grow up? What was their home life like? What was that modeled for them? Like,
Mm.
so I think it just allows you to have more compassion, and more understanding that people are all operating out of where they are, you
Mm-hmm.
know? And so,
Yeah,
um, I think,
for sure.
yeah, I feel like that my faith has definitely helped me have more, like, be less judgmental,
Mm.
um, and
Yeah,
not take things so personally. Yeah. What
so
about
good.
you?
Yeah. Well, I would love to tell a short little analogy here, because I think it's really helpful when I think about my faith and I think about this journey that God has had me on of self awareness and just actually coming home to Him.
Mm-hmm.
Um, So there's this book called Self to Lose, Self to Find by Marilyn Vansel. So it's an Enneagram book, but it's a faith based, she has some scriptures and things like that. And she tells this story of like a seed. Um, and the seed is covered in your hard seed coat. But in order to um, sprout into a plant or a tree and grow, it has to go into the ground. It has to go into the darkness. It has to then break open the seed coat and then shed it. And that is required for the vulnerable interior part of the seed to meet the elements and grow. And so I think we're a lot like that. She makes this distinction that we are born as this vulnerable, precious little seed. And because the world is harsh and we experience pain and we experience things that make us want to self-protect, we develop this hard outer shell. And so whatever that looks like for you, it's different for everybody, but we have these strategies. And so whether that's attachment patterns or Enneagram personality patterns, they're these outer parts of us that aren't really who we are, but it's meant to protect us. And it also prevents us from experiencing God's love. And so, what I have learned is that by allowing that outer shell and all those strategies that you don't need most of the time, to fall away, you can start to actually receive God's love and become the beloved that He intended for you to be. And so you have a unique personality that at your very best and healthiest, you reflect Him in different ways. And so I just love taking the intersection of faith and things that are just, I know are true, like that we are promised an abundant life,
Mm-hmm.
that we don't have to wait for heaven for that, that we should be able to experience that now, which means even um, in really difficult relationships and a tumultuous political climate and like all these things, we we should be able to still experience that joy and abundance and peace that's promised to us. And if we commit to doing the work of self-awareness and rewiring patterns, we can, with God's help, heal.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
I love it. I love that there's so much hope,
Mm-hmm.
you know? Well, what are
Yeah.
some current things that you are learning about right now, Jess?
Right now, well, more recently, we have picked up the Gottman 7 principles. So John Gottman and Julie Gottman are marriage researchers, and they have researched just common things that lead to divorce. And in the same process, found all of the patterns and behaviors that lead to people staying together and be happy and flourishing in marriage. And so, whether that's just relationships or marriage, these principles have just been so helpful. My husband and I lead a marriage group where we discuss, just different concepts and try to unpack recent fights and,
Mm-hmm.
just really hold each other accountable for doing the work. And the Gottman principles have been so helpful.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that comes to mind. How about you?
Lately, I have been reading the Let Them theory by Mel Robbins.
Okay.
And I feel like that's just such a, I don't know, I really like it. It's very simple. But it's just basically like allowing people to be who they are. You can't change anybody else, what they do, what they say, how they respond, but you can do you. And then also, like, it kind of feels like it parallels a little bit like with surrendering, like having your hands, like having more of like an open posture of your hands with your life and not forcing and trying to strive or manipulate or try to control things that you just don't even have control because it's all illusion anyway. This
Mm-hmm.
control, this illusion, this gives us this false security.
Yeah.
And then for me, because of my faith, it makes me think about just continuing to trust God with those things. So like, say you don't get invited to something, okay, like let them, like there's something else that, God might be doing in your life or bringing other people in, or, you know what I mean? Like, you didn't get the job, or you didn't get into the college that you wanted to. Okay, well, there's a reason. I'm just going to like trust that there's something else better for me then. But then also, showing how you show up, like
Mm.
what are things that you can be doing? Like, she, just real quick, but she talked about how she wasn't invited to a vacation with a lot of the friends that she used to be good friends with. She talked initially how it like really hurt her feelings, and she was seeing all this stuff on Facebook and kind of spiraling, and then she
Mm-hmm.
just realized, she was like, but wait a minute, what have I been like a good friend to them? Like I haven't really
Mm.
kept in touch with them for several years. Like, so it helped her reevaluate herself to show up better,
Mm.
and make the effort. So, that's been a good book. And, I'm actually leading a, study with these Wofford College girls. And we are about to embark on, it's by Louis Giglio, and it's Don't Give the Enemy a Seat at Your Table. So I'm about to start
Mm.
reading that. So I'm excited about that. It's just about, thoughts of the mind and all of that. So,
Mm-hmm.
just always, I don't know. I love learning. Like, I
Mm.
just love, especially the things that you're really passionate about, it's just like, yeah, I literally could just like listen
Yeah.
to podcasts all day. It's very interesting to me. Yeah.
Well, I love learning too, and I think that's why we connect so well.
Yeah,
And
for sure.
you know, there's never anything stagnant when you're always learning something new,
Yeah.
right? So it just
Yeah.
transforms your imagination for what's possible the more you learn and the more you
Yeah.
grow. So
Yeah.
yeah, I love that. Well, thank you for just joining me on this project. I'm just so excited for what we're doing here.
I know. I'm so excited too. It's just very full circle to be here with you and be able to do this together. So I'm so excited.
Yeah. Well, to close it out, why don't we just real fast, just kind of cast vision for what we're inviting people
Yeah.
into, the future of this podcast. Why is transformation needed? Just tell me any thoughts you have on what we're inviting people into.
I My vision for Transforming Us podcast is to have just very real, authentic conversation about life, about you know, just people. Everybody is so different, but yet sometimes our patterns are so similar. To help understand those patterns, to be able to have awareness, to just be able to have a better sense of ourselves, better sense of who we are. I think once we understand like the pattern in relationship with ourselves and then God and with others, it really radically can just completely change. I have seen a good friend of mine, has was on the verge of divorce, and they were having these patterns they could not figure out, and were separated, and they both unknowingly had gone into therapy and discovered attachment theory. They had the tools now to understand, oh my gosh, it's like light bulb moments go off for people, and it's
Mm-hmm.
just so empowering because you're like, oh my gosh, this is why I'm doing this. This is stuff from my past of how I show up this way because I didn't feel safe in this scenario growing up, or you know what I mean? Like all this stuff. And
Yeah.
so when we start to understand it, have a language to it, connects the dots. And then especially, like for them, like it's completely transformed their marriage. They're healthier and happier than ever. And, you see these breakthroughs, they're real, and it
Mm.
really changes people and it changes their life. And it's just so important. And I just think so many people should be talking more about it. So I'm so excited to be here with you and
Mm.
just share what we're learning and how we've seen for ourselves and the people around us have hope and change that really is real.
Mm-hmm.
So that really lights me up. Like, gets me very
Yeah.
excited, and we can be talking a lot about that stuff in the future.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I would just share that. I mean, I think we've talked a lot about the pattern awareness part. Like that's
Mm-hmm.
evident that is the place to start, is
Yeah.
to be curious and observe, and not from a place of self-judgment, but
Mhm.
we can learn when we actually observe without judgment, and notice what's happening, like as if you're standing back and it's not quite you, but you're like, what's happening here? What are these things that I'm doing, that they're doing, that's triggering me, whatnot? Um, and so through this podcast, I just want to have more conversations about connection and disconnection and
Mhm.
what it looks like. I think we didn't mention this yet, but attachment patterns affect our relationship with God.
Mhm.
You said with ourselves and others and God, but so much of our faith journey is also impacted by our earliest relationships, because our parents were meant to be that secure, safe base for us. And so discovering insecurities and healing some of those wounds gives us the opportunity to have an even better relationship um, with God the Father. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, and I think a big part of my journey has been soul care work. And so bringing in elements and practices that we can share with people and with one another, as we just discuss, like ways to self-regulate and ways to take care of your own needs and step back from life and take care of your soul. Know what kind of state your soul's even in.
Yeah.
That's really important. So just the vision for this podcast is just a gradual transformation, nothing overnight, but just a moving through and moving towards what God has for us. So,
Yeah. I love that. It's beautifully said.
mm. So yeah, really excited. And I'm just so thankful.
Me too.
All right. Well, we will see you guys next time on our next episode. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Transforming Us podcast. We hope that you enjoyed the conversation and that you found it helpful. If you loved what you heard, we would really appreciate if you would take a moment and leave us a 5-star review and rating. Your support helps us reach more listeners like you.
And also, don't forget to follow us on social media and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more relationship content. Then, if you're looking to take your growth to the next level, check out our coaching services and groups at transformingus.org.
We're here to help you transform your patterns and enjoy more secure relationships.
Until next time, in the words of Raoul Shane, you do not need to do big things. Just do small things in a big way. Then transformation will follow you.